Hi, my name is Candy Akins. I'm the Special Education Coordinator at Langston Chapel Middle School. So question number 1, describe your role in the IEP process. My role is a kind of like a facilitator. I am considered the LEA. That role can also be filled by an administrator, but in Bullitt County, they allow the special ed coordinators to provide that service. It basically just has to be somebody who is able to offer services. And so in Bullitt County, they allow special ed coordinators to do that. I facilitate the meetings, I do a lot of the paperwork for the meetings, and just make sure that everything runs smoothly. Summarize the steps that should be followed prior to creating an IEP for an individual with disabilities. So for kids that are initially being put into special education, we would review a psychological report provided by the psychologist. And as a group, we decide if they meet the eligibility for special education. And then at that point, if the committee agrees that they do have an eligibility, such as a learning disability or autism, something like that, the parent can say if they want them to be in special education. At that point, we create an IEP. We create the IEP based off of the psychological report, because that's basically all we have to go off of at that point. We have the stuff from the SST and the RTI process, but we really use the psychological report. It's very thorough, and we can get a lot of good information about deficits that the student has to make sure that when we write that IEP, we're providing the appropriate accommodations, putting them in the appropriate placement, and stuff like that. For students that have annual IEP meetings, it's important to collect data before you have that next IEP meeting. You don't want the IEP to be identical every year. We would hope that our students are growing and getting better and having less deficits. And so it's important that we have data to provide to show how they're coming on their goals and objectives, if they need the supports that we're providing for them. And so bringing that data from the classroom teachers and from the special education teachers, even if not everybody can be here, having all that data to look at as an IEP committee is very important. Describe how you involve parents, guardians, and students in the special ed process. Parents and guardians, we always hope, will come to the meetings, either participate by phone, participate in person, or now we allow them to participate via Google Meet. It's important that they're here. It's important that they have a voice for their child. And so we don't want them to just proceed without every time. We want their input. So as far as the students, in middle school, the students are not required to attend their IEP meetings. They start attending their IEP meetings at their transition meeting, their 8th grade year, and then all of their high school. They really start pushing for advocacy at their transition meeting, and they want them to know what their services are, what their accommodations are, and they want them to start learning how to speak up for themselves, how to request their accommodations, to make sure that they're getting the services that they need. And so it's important that they actually know what that is. With our 8th graders now, we do try and, the case managers try and pull them aside and make sure they know what their IEP says, what their accommodations are, to get them in that process of why they have these things, why it's important, if it helps them. If it doesn't help them, that's something that we need to talk about. And so getting them involved, they're very involved in high school. They're very involved in the process in high school, and so just getting them prepared for that. Describe strategies that can be used to ensure confidentiality. Okay, so we're under federal guidelines, and we have to follow FERPA to make sure that information only is told about the students to those parents. Making sure that all of our documentation only has one name on it. We don't want to have a documentation with multiple kids' names on it that we can't provide at an IEP meeting. So making sure that those documentation sheets are per kid. Our files for our students are very confidential. We do keep them in one room. The teachers have to check them out and return them to this office so that they don't get left miscellaneously in different places, taken home, left in a car and stolen. It's a lot of very important information that we would not want to get out. It's also important that special ed teachers and general ed teachers know that things that you hear in an IEP meeting is not something that you are talking to your friends about in the grocery store line, that it is confidential information and that it's not to be shared outside of an educational environment. And, people that don't have a need to know don't need to see the IEP paperwork. But for classroom teachers, it is important that they understand who the child is and ways that they can help. And so providing that information to them and allowing them to look at the IEPs and kind of see that child is important. Explain how you offer support to parents, guardians of individuals with disabilities, types of support and resources. Okay, so I would say the county has a parent mentor. Her name is Faye Blythe. And so she does a lot of really great trainings. And so she's really good about sending flyers out to us to make sure that we're inviting our parents. They do a lot more for probably our self-contained population, making sure that the parents are aware of, they do need to start preparing for life after school, even when they're in middle school. It's important that they start making those plans. If they're going to get guardianship, stuff like that. But she also does offer like transition fairs and fairs for parents of students with disabilities, and she'll invite different resources, agencies, and so they can get information about ways that people can help them in the community for therapies or extracurricular activities and stuff like that. She's a great resource, and she's very good at providing stuff for us to give our parents. Describe how you collaborate with the school psychologist and administration as team members in the special ed process. So the school psychologist is a very important member of our team. It's important that if we are looking at an eligibility or if we're looking at a reevaluation, that we talk with the school psychologist. He will usually tell us if he wants to reevaluate. So they have to be reevaluated every 3 years, but they don't always test. So if a student was tested 3 years ago, they probably won't test again at this point unless a parent requests it. So, but they do try and test about every 6 years. So, but that is, the school psychologist would be the one to tell us if he's going to test or if he's not going to test. And then administration, it's very important that they are involved in the special ed process. If I can't be in the meeting, then the administration has to step in as the LEA. And so Ms. Francis has stepped in for me when I couldn't be here one day. It's also very important for behavior purposes. When they distribute discipline to a special education student, it's very important that I'm kind of in that loop, because students that go to ISS are still supposed to receive their accommodations. They're still supposed to receive support. So if they have para support, they're still supposed to receive those services. If a student is suspended, they get 10 days per year. So it's important that I can keep track of that and that we don't get close to that 10 days. At that point, we have to start doing manifestations, and you really try and stay away from that if at all possible. So it's important that administration and myself work closely together, especially with discipline. Describe the special education resources and training provided for your district. I think our district is really good about providing support for our teachers and trainings, especially new teachers. They do send new teachers to RESA to it's like a 10 afternoons over the course of about 3 months. And it kind of is just an induction in special ed and kind of how we do things in this area. But also on our days that we have training through our district, they will provide services to us. They have lots of opportunities for us to attend, like behavior seminars, anything that's going to help us in our classrooms. And we're working on right now one it's called Aspire. And so it's a self-advocacy program. And right now it's currently in the high schools. Next year we're adding it to the middle schools. And so this year we're training all the middle schools on how to do this process for the students. So they do offer quite a bit of resources for us. Explain how you collect data for IEP progress monitoring. So every student that has an IEP has goals and objectives. Typically they're in math and English, or one or the other or both. And so those goals and objectives have to be updated every 9 weeks and then sent to the families. And then that's kind of how we gauge if they're making progress in their classes. And so it's important that the special education teachers collect that data. So either by, if you're a co-teacher, working with the general ed teacher and the special ed teacher in that class, making sure that goal and objective is being addressed in the classroom, and then updating it to see the progress on it. Resource classrooms are a little bit easier. They're able to really touch on those goals and objectives and make sure that they're collecting that data. A lot of teachers will, especially in a resource setting, will set aside like Fridays, and Fridays are a day that they're going to work on objectives. And then they have their documentation piece that they can work with the student, document how their progress is, and then see, and so they have the hard data at the end of the 9 weeks. It's a lot easier to update IEPs when you have hard data sitting in front of you. So for those, that's how they update it. And it is the case manager's job to make sure that all the IEP goals and objectives are updated every 9 weeks, but that case manager may not necessarily be the teacher. So they have to get with either the special ed teacher or general ed teacher that is teaching those students and get that information. Describe the collaboration between special education and general education teachers to meet the needs of students. It's very important that everybody works together, but especially like in a co-teach setting, we want to make sure that special ed teachers and general ed teachers are both collaborating and working together. We would really hope that it looks like just 2 teachers in the classroom. We wouldn't want the students to know that there's a special ed teacher and a general ed teacher. There's just 2 teachers in the classroom. And so collaborating and making sure that they're both on track with the curriculum and they both can teach the curriculum. So planning together is very important. Having common planning times is very important. It's not always feasible, but it's very important. Right now we're down a few teachers because of virtual teaching, and so we are having to kind of cover bases, and they don't all have the same planning time. And so working that out and trying to figure out a way to make sure that you're still collaborating with those general education teachers. The resource teachers that teach in a resource setting, it's just as important for them to collaborate with the general ed teachers. If you teach 6th grade resource math, it would be important to collaborate and plan with the 6th grade general ed math teacher so that you kind of know their pace, you know what they're teaching, because you should be doing similar things. It's just going to be a matter of you're going to take it maybe a little different pace, you're going to hit the highlights, but it's still, you want to keep going through the same, they're working on the same grade level standards. And so kind of having an idea of where that gen ed teacher is important. The case managers, it's very important for them to communicate with the gen ed teachers to make sure that they're in contact with them, to make sure that the gen ed teachers don't have any questions about the special ed kids, and if they're having struggles or they need help. We have had some 6th grade teachers reach out this week. They're having struggles with a student, and the case manager got on it, and we created a picture schedule, a visual schedule for the student, and it made a huge difference. So just the fact that they reached out and they said they were struggling with this student, we put a plan in action and we made it work, and now the student is has had a much better day because of it. So making sure that they do have a good working relationship and they feel comfortable talking to that person is very important. Thank you.